And we are so delighted to welcome you in on this Wednesday. We've got a great lineup for you this time. Thanks for making us a part of your day. By the way, our lineup this day also includes, for most of you, a question and answer session with D.C. Councilwoman Alyssa Silverman. But up first, kids and concussions. The National Football League now admitting what seemingly everyone already believed, that head injuries that occur on the field can have huge consequences later in life. What does this mean for parents and young people? Should families cross football off their list? Dr. Gioia is director of the Safe Concussion Outcome Recovery and Education Program at Children's National Medical System, and he is here with us in studio today. Great timing because this is March is it's like Concussion Awareness Month.
The Brain Injury Awareness Month, yes.
Brain Injury Awareness Month. So it is great to have you here. Great to be able to tap your expertise, and in a moment we'll open the phone lines to give parents and grandparents and others a chance to jump in on the conversation. Bring us sort of to the present moment in terms of what the latest medical information is about what happens long term when we get bonked, when we get hit hard in the head on the football field, on the soccer field, whatever it is. What are the newest concerns about that?
Yeah, well, let me just say that we don't have a lot of research evidence at this point to answer that very question, and that's part of our problem. So right now what we have is a fair amount of conjecture. We know that there can be some very devastating consequences to certain individuals that play sports long term. How that relates to our kids on the fields these days, we really do not know that. Having said that, we know that we can prevent the problems by having leagues that understand now more about the head, more about the brain, how they can promote what we think of as head-safe activities. Football is always the sport that we focus on, but the reality is in our clinics we see kids from many other sports as well, and we've got to make sure that we are really handling all those sports in safe ways.
What are some of the non-football situations, the non-football injuries that might bring about a situation where a family, where a young person is in your clinic seeking your advice, suffering perhaps in some way?
Yeah, well, let me just say there's sport-related and non-sport-related injuries. So we certainly see, cheerleaders. You might not think about that, but they're throwing each other in the air, they're landing on top of each other. Ice hockey, field hockey. But we also see kids falling off bicycles, skateboards, motor vehicle collisions. So there's lots of different things that we need to understand that we need to prevent. And within the sports world, we know that we need to begin to look at those risk activities and minimize exposure or trauma to the head.
You're wearing a soccer tie.
Yes.
What does the header, the use of the head to redirect the ball, do in a routine sense, as multiplied over time if you play soccer for many years? Do you have a feel, either data-driven or anecdotal or whatever, about soccer and kids and head injury?
Well, again, we don't have a lot of research evidence for kids and headers. We have for usually the professional player. The reality is that the header itself, the ball hitting the head itself, does not seem to be the concussion promoter, but it's usually when the two heads together are going up, two players, they collide, they elbow each other, they fall and they hit the ground. So it's more of the situation.
They're trying to get to the same spot often.
Right, same spot. So they collide in that way. And so, if we look at prevention, it may not be the heading itself as much as it is the actions that go into it. Now, also having said that, we also know that heading is a far frequent activity, or less frequent activity, in young kids. We probably can eliminate what they don't do anyways from our practice schedules, and so U.S. Soccer has done that and said that let's remove that from the game for the younger kids and begin to look at how we dose that experience for older kids.
I want to give parents and grandparents at home an opportunity to jump into the conversation and to talk directly with Dr. Gioia about this topic. March is Brain Injury Awareness Month.
Yes.
You've developed an app, and we're excited to be able to talk about that in the moments that follow. But let me give out the phone number now. It's already posted to the bottom of the screen. This is a great opportunity for those of you watching live in the 11 a.m. hour to join the conversation. Hope you'll do so. Grab an open line now so we can get your comment or your question onto the air. 703-387-1020 is our number. Dial now, please. Grab an open line. Look forward to speaking with you. We'll go to the phones as your calls come in. What is your recommendation to coaches?
Yeah.
They want to win. They want their young people to have the excitement, the joy, whatever, of winning. So balancing when a player who's had a potential injury can go back into the game versus letting him or her work with the doctor, make sure going back is the proper thing. There's obviously an intense balance there. The competitive juices are flowing. It's the middle of the game, and there's a tight window for a decision to be made.
Right.
Your thoughts are what?
Well, we have the view, when in doubt, you sit them out. And really, every state in the union, as well as D.C., has a law, a youth concussion law, that says that coaches need to be trained to recognize a suspected concussion. They're not meant to diagnose it. They're just to recognize when there may be a problem. If they have any doubt, they sit that player out. Very, very important. Now, let me also kind of give a little bit of backdrop. We want kids playing sports. We want them doing all the physical activities that promote so many aspects of their development. So it's very important. So that balance becomes critical. Coaches and parents, and I would say the adults, need to kind of check themselves sometimes and realize that competition can never take precedence over safety, and especially brain safety. And again, now that we're doing more and more with this kind of work, we know that we can begin to examine those situations. And so for a coach, and I work with many youth coaches, the word is getting out now that it's more important that youngster's safety is primary. Many of them are pulling kids out almost sometimes for too long, but rather we do that than not at all at this point.
Were you struck by the admission from the top NFL executive at that hearing on Capitol Hill the other day? And are you getting, or do you expect in the months and years ahead to get more questions from parents about, bottom line, is football safe for my kid?
Yeah. So we get those questions all the time. No, I was not surprised. I was sitting right next to Jeff Miller when he talked about that. I was at the hearing itself. Football has known that it has its risks, and some of the issues that we talked about with Dr. McKee's work. But the issue right now is we don't understand how you get to that end point. And we are now making some really conjectural kind of statements around this. The bottom line is we believe that with everything we're doing now in training coaches, training parents, looking at our sports, we will really reduce those kinds of bad outcomes. And I think parents and coaches need to know they can be armed with important information. We'll talk about the app in a second, where they can identify if there's a concussion situation that is upon them.
It's much more a part of the national conversation now.
Yeah.
To what extent are you relatively comfortable or confident that the average coach at the youth level has concussion awareness on his or her radar? I'm not hugely comfortable, only in that we've only begun the process. We had a whole grant this year in D.C. where we were putting that education and training in place. The implementation is the biggest challenge ahead of us. And so the laws are there, the rules are there, and now we need to implement it. I think we have the structure and the capacity to do it, but we've got to put action into the process now. Tell us about the app and tell us about the work that you do in this area.
Yeah, so I've been working with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, on their Heads Up toolkits for the last now 12 years. That program is all about educating parents, coaches, physicians. And so we, in the work that we did about 10 years ago, developed materials for coaches to learn what are the signs, what are the symptoms, how do I know what to look for. And we decided to take our materials and basically put them in their pocket. And so we came up with a concussion recognition and response app. Basically what happens is it walks a coach through the kinds of questions that they need to know. Was there a blow to the head? Yes. Now, tell me what you see. Was there vomiting? No. Was there balance problems? Yes. And you literally walk through that and answer those questions. At the end of it, it will tell you whether a suspected concussion is upon them and then the actions they take.
This is real time? This is
real time. And it produces a small little emailable report that coach can send to the parent and say, take your child to your doctor and see if in fact this is a concussion or not and what they would do. So the whole idea was to put information and really power into the pockets of coaches and parents so that if they suspect a concussion, they're going to protect that child.
In the old days, we talked about having your bell rung,
Right.
and I don't know if it was a badge of honor or a pride thing or whatever, but injuries of all sorts were just understood to be part of the game. If it was the head, the ankle, whatever, and the period between games was the period for getting better. The period in games was
Right.
the time for competing. Do you think we are cognizant enough of the risks that this sort of, oh, he got his bell rung, let him sit for a couple plays back in the game, is that behind us for the most part?
If we're following the rules and the laws, it should be behind us. But again, the implementation of that takes some time, particularly at the youth sport level where we have so many leagues and so many different organizations. We've got to get the word out. We've got to get that training. We're moving in the right direction. We still have a good ways to go.
You talked at the beginning about the lack of solid data in this
Yeah.
area. Is there prospect for information that might help guide people like you and people like the parents listening now?
Well, and so at this roundtable we had in front of Congress last week, I directly said we do not have that research information for young kids. We need to have funding of NIH, of the CDC, where we can bring that information. We need to know, are girls different than boys? We think they may be for these injuries. We've got to provide that. Are young kids different than adolescents? Probably so, but we've got to have more reliable information around those issues.
What might account for a gender difference?
A number of things. Number one, our brains are different, but number two, our bodies are different. Necks are a little different, maybe more flexible, a little less strong. Our core may be a little less able to move us away from a hit or a blow, so we may be more vulnerable to that hit. And then the recovery process, there's questions. Are girls just more honest about reporting, or is there something about their brains that are different and it might take a little bit longer to recover?
Helmet technology has come quite a ways from the leather helmet or
Yeah.
the early models, or when back in the olden times when there was no helmet used whatsoever.
Right.
Is it possible that there was kind of an unintended consequence in that, with players feeling so protected, that now the head is a battering ram?
Absolutely.
And they're almost they're almost causing, if you will, some of the potential issues?
Absolutely. We got a little too comfortable with our protection. And in fact, we are moving back now towards some other methods. We have a colleague at the University of New Hampshire who is actually teaching tackling without the helmet. Now, again, not putting kids' heads and brains at risk, but teaching them respect for this head and this brain. In USA Football, I'm on their medical advisory board. We actually have a heads-up tackling method in which we take that head totally out of the line of fire and teach them shoulder, arm, how you then keep the head up. All the things that we think will prevent this injury.
Very important topic. Dr. Gerard Gioia is a division chief in the Department of Neuropsychology at the Children's National Medical System in the district. Thank you very much for your time. Great topic, great information. Good having you here.
My pleasure.
We will step aside. We're back, though, with much more News Talk. Keep it here.